Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Richard Skipper celebrates the best in entertainment. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to Richard Skipper's Full Moon Positive Book Club. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how this started. Last January, I met with a few friends, and we were going to start a monthly positive book club celebrating positivity from month to month and meeting when the full moon rose in the sky each month. And then a little thing called COVID took over, and it threw our ideas completely out of the water. So we only had 2 meetings, and then we started meeting monthly each month. And so we're meeting once a month. And just a few months ago, I was reading about April Shprintz, and I asked her to come on the show, and she said yes. And I am so thrilled that she's here today. Before we talk about her, I want to talk a little bit about this particular full moon. I want to let everyone know that we are in the midst of a major storm right here in New York. So if for any reason that we are thrown out and we go off the air, you know why. April, first of all, how are you and where are you today?
I am fantastic. I'm excited to be here. I am in Palm Beach, Florida. So I don't have the storm, but technically I think I should and you shouldn't.
Palm Beach, Florida. How is everything in Florida right now? It's a little crazy right now in the world.
Yeah, it's crazy in the world, but I find that in my own personal world, it's beautiful, and I focus on the things that are awesome, and the weather here is amazing. So I enjoy that quite a bit.
Since we are celebrating the full moon, I want to ask you, are you affected by the full moon, or have you ever planned things around the full moon? And do you know anything that's peculiar about this particular full moon?
Oh, I feel like you're putting me on the spot. So I don't feel like I am overly affected by the full moon. However, I do notice the things that go on around. I can always tell when it's a full moon based on things that are happening with other folks. And no, I wasn't aware that there was something peculiar about this one, but I bet you know, and I'd love to know.
Well, this is called the August blue moon. And a blue moon occurs when there are 2 full moons in a month. But this blue moon is the only blue moon in August. And it's called the blue moon in August because there was a mistake in the Farmer's Almanac in 1935. So this is not technically a blue moon, but we will call it a blue moon today for that sake. And it's also the sturgeon full moon. So here we are. And my show is all about celebrating. And there are 3 very interesting things that are being celebrated today. And the first one, I think of you as we celebrate today. And believe it or not, today is called Be an Angel Day. And I think of you as an angel that truly walks among us. Because as I read your history and I hear about what you do, you truly have this generosity of spirit. And you carry that through with everything you do. And I want to hear about your path and how that all began for you. And also, it's National Tooth Fairy Day. I'm a little bit older than you are. But when I think of the Tooth Fairy, I think of Bewitched, because there's an episode of Bewitched with Imogen Coca, where do you know anything about this?
I know, but I'd love to be with you.
You have to look it up, where she was the Tooth Fairy, and she decides that she's had enough. She discovers alcohol. She starts drinking, and she wants to give up being a tooth fairy, which puts Samantha on the spot, and she goes out being a witch. And it's also National Peaches Day. So go out and have peach schnapps or something tonight and think of your favorite tooth fairy. So, April, let's talk about you. When did you first realize that it was better to give than to receive?
I think growing up, that was really a prevalent theme. And it was interesting because we were a family of very little means. But one of the things that my mom often said is, you'll never do without because you helped someone else.
Hmm.
And so I can't remember when it wasn't a thought. I know for me, I experienced a generosity of spirit that changed my life when I was around 9 years old. But even before then, it was always such a big part of the environment in my community and the folks that we knew.
Now, tell us a little bit about the family life that you had. I always like to go back to the 5-year-old self, because the 5-year-old self to me is the purest self. It's just before you start school. Peer pressure begins to be added upon you. And it's that time when you start becoming what you think your friends want you to be, what teachers think you should be or should not be. And it really is a major molding time in a person's life. So tell us a little bit about your home life, a little bit about your parents, brothers and sisters.
Sure. So it's funny that you say 5 years old, because I tell people to this day, I feel like a 5-year-old with a bank account. And I think that when you're being authentic to yourself, that is how you feel,
Mhm.
right? I'm a 5-year-old, but I can drive and I have, some money to spend on things. So growing up was interesting. Like I said, I come from a family of very humble means. My
Mhm.
parents were divorced before I was even born. And so it was
Wow.
me and my mom and my little sister. And at the age of 5, we still lived in Ohio, but we were about to make a move to Tennessee. And things were a little tumultuous. My mom had substance abuse issues, but what I remember the most about my childhood was always this sense of anything is possible. Big things can happen. I remember watching, I'm going to date myself here, but I was a huge fan of the television show Solid Gold, right?
Mm.
I
Mhm.
mean, I was about those solid gold dancers. I just thought that is what I want to be when I grow up. So when I was 5, I would go between, I want to be this particular solid gold dancer and I want to be Whitney Houston. And my mom was like, you can't sing and you aren't black, sweetheart. You have got to find something else that you want to do with your life.
But you could be your own version of Whitney Houston.
Right. But I couldn't sing. She was right about that. But I just was so enamored with both that particular
Mhm.
solid gold dancer and with Whitney Houston. And just always thinking that, well, you can be anything you want to be. And my mom said, well, yes, within reason. And within reason just never really resonated with me.
Mhm. Well, I also grew up in a household. My father had an alcohol problem. So I know what it's like to grow up in that kind of a household. But what were your dreams? What were your desires as a young girl beyond being Whitney Houston? And at what point did you realize that you were not going to become Whitney Houston?
It's funny. I never realized I wasn't going to become Whitney Houston. I just changed my mind.
Hmm.
So for me, just another year or two later, I became obsessed with people who were on television, and I
Hmm.
thought, man, that's the gig. That's what I want to do. I want to be someone like Barbara Walters and be on television. And it was interesting because I remember telling people this. At this time, I was about 6. I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna be on television, and they'd look at me like I was crazy because again, we lived in, at this point, rural Tennessee. No one in my family had gone to college, and I think maybe 1 or 2 people had graduated high school. And here I was saying, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to do television. It's going to be amazing. And they would just look at me like, were you transplanted here? You're not like us. And to me, I took that as a great thing. I was like, well, excellent, because none of you have a life that I want. And I want to go be on TV and do these things. And if I'm not like you, then it must mean that I can.
Okay,
And
well,
that's what I remember thinking.
now I'm going to ask you. I mean, did you grow up in a television household? I mean, you watched Solid Gold.
Hmm.
Now, so I'm going to really date you because I know that period. So the other shows that were on at that time were Dynasty.
Hmm.
Were you a fan of Dynasty?
Wasn't allowed to watch it.
Okay. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
I am aware of it, but I didn't watch that.
Okay. I'm asking because these were the types of shows that were on at the same time that Lives of Solid Gold was on.
You
Um,
know, I was a big fan of the Jeffersons.
okay. But that was a show about upward mobility.
Hmm.
So And what is very interesting about both of those shows was that in both of those shows, they were shows. You're looking at Whitney Houston and you're watching a show about an African-American family who moves from below poverty to, the highest levels of success that an African-American family could reach at that point. I mean, were you exposed yourself as a young white girl growing up in the area that you were? I mean, did you have African-American friends? Did you grow up, just to put it out there, I grew up in the South as well, dealing and seeing racial prejudice around you as well?
So it was really an interesting way to grow up because when I was from like ages 3 to almost 6, we lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and we lived in the inner city. And so to me, I didn't even know that I lived in a racially diverse environment because it was all I'd ever known. I remember at the same time I wanted to be Whitney Houston and all these things, I really wanted to get my hair cornrowed and put beads in it because my best friend had her hair like that and it was beautiful. And my mom trying to explain to me that we couldn't do that to my hair. So I grew up very naive about the level of diversity that I lived in. And then when my mom's mother wanted her to move back home and we moved to the rural South, I was shocked because I asked, I was like, why is everybody white here? Where are the other types of people? And we lived in a neighborhood where there were Black people, there were people from, there were Asian people, there were Mexican, all these different races. And then we moved to this area where everybody kind of looked like us. And to me, I felt like something was missing. And then I went through my whole, I guess, elementary and high school career where there would be maybe 2 Black children in the whole school. So it was really interesting and weird. And it wasn't until I went into the military where, again, I was in a much more racially diverse environment that things felt normal to me. That always felt so weird.
So you are a veteran, and I want to thank you for your service.
It's my honor.
Yes, yeah. So thank you. But I want to go back for a moment. You had these lofty dreams. When was the first time that you felt a sense that you had less than? Or did you ever feel that as a young child?
Absolutely did. So in my book, Magic Blue Rocks, my first chapter is about
by the way, I've ordered, and it's on back order, by the way, which is
wow.
Yes, for you. Yes, it should have been here by now.
Well, thank you so much for ordering it. I hope you enjoy it. So I was in first grade, and another first grader happened to comment that my pants were too short. And I was growing, so I get it. And I told him, yeah, they're too short. Well, I'll get new ones in the fall. That's when we get clothes, because it was spring. And he said, what do you mean?
Did they refer to them as Highwater pants? He
didn't, but later in life, absolutely. Absolutely. Not at that moment. And I just mentioned, that I only got clothes once a year. And he said, oh, you're poor. And it's interesting because different folks have read the book or have heard me tell the story. They're like, what a mean little kid. But he actually wasn't being mean at all. He was very analytical. He was a very nice little boy. And to him, he was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You get clothes once a year. You're poor. I don't have to tell you again, your pants are too short. And so I went through this whole thing with him because I was like, well, I'm not poor. That's a terrible thing. There's no way I'm that. And he led me through this series of questions because, again, he was a very smart young man. And it was this defining moment in my life because when I realized, based on the questions he asked me, that I was indeed poor, I felt such incredible shame, such incredible just fire in my stomach of, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that. I have to figure out how to solve this. And interestingly, even though I was only 6, I really felt like it was incumbent upon me to solve it. I thought if my mom knew how to handle it, we wouldn't be in this situation. So I was going to have to figure that out. And that led me to starting my very first business that day when I went home to this tiny little house that we lived in and decided to start a business.
And let's talk about that. So What were your first steps in terms of starting the business? And what did you know what this business was going to be that you were going to be starting?
I had no no idea. And it's funny that I mentioned how much I like George, right? George Jefferson. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to be rich because the opposite of poor is rich. And the only people I knew of that were rich from television had businesses. And I was like, okay, so I need a business. I need to figure something out. So I'm at home and I was like, I could sell things because I couldn't really make anything and I wanted to do it quickly. So I'm looking around the house and there was nothing I could sell that I wanted to part with, right? The things that might have been sellable, I was like, I'd probably get in trouble if I got rid of that. My mom was at work and I was at home with my older sister who was 7 years older. And she's like, you can't just sell our stuff to the neighbors anyway. And if I'd found anything that I could have sold, I would have argued with her. But because I didn't find anything, I was like, keep looking, keep looking. And I happened to go outside. The one thing I found in the house that I thought might be useful was a couple of blue markers. And I just put them in my pocket. It's like, we'll see. And I went outside and I'm looking at our gravel driveway and there are all these rocks. And I thought, I could color those rocks blue and make them magic. And then I could sell them. And then I could put magic in them, which I believed in at the time, right? You're 6 years old, you believe in all sorts of things. And I was like, I can put magic in these rocks so that the people who have them can do anything they believe they can do. And innocently, I really believed I could do that because I was still at that age where I believed I could do anything that I thought I could do. And there had been times that adults had said, oh, no, you can't do that. And then I would go and do it. So I thought, oh, this is great. I'm special. I can give this to other people. So we colored those rocks all night. My sister volunteered to be free labor. Thank goodness. We got about 30 of them. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sell these tomorrow at school. So the next day I hid them because I didn't talk to my sister a lot about the fact that I was going to sell it because her bedtime was later than mine. And I was afraid she'd tell my mom when she got home from work that I was going to sell these rocks at school and I'd get shut down. So I knew what I was doing wasn't 100% allowed, but I also thought I'll ask forgiveness instead of permission.
But you also knew that there would be obstacles that would be placed in your way by just saying that you were going to do this.
Sure. And I didn't want to deal with them. So the next morning I put them in my backpack. I went to school. And when the teacher left the room, I decided, all right, this is my time. I'm going to sell these rocks. And I told the kids that I had magic blue rocks and that if you had them, you could do anything. And it was so funny because they were like, oh, wow, did they turn your fingers blue? And my fingers were blue from coloring them with the markers. And I was like, they did. And when I was thinking about the story once I was older, I thought, you gave them the wrong impression. They thought that magically they turned your fingers blue. So almost every kid in class bought a rock. There was a little boy that bought two, which it was so interesting, Richard. I talked to that little boy only about 2 years ago for the first time since we were in school together. And he was like, I bought two of your rocks. And I knew that everyone had bought one, but I didn't know anyone had bought two.
Does he still have those rocks?
No.
Okay.
Although he thinks his mom does because his mom kept his room kind of the same. So I never followed up on that. I should follow up on that. So I sold the rocks at school and there was a little girl who wanted to buy one who I mispriced them. So I priced them, Richard, for $0.25. And I had a really intelligent pricing strategy. Basically, I really liked quarters. And I thought, this will be awesome. That's what I'll price them as. At the time, though, school lunch was 80 cents. And a lot of kids were given $1 by their parents for lunch. So had I priced them at 20 cents, I probably would have done a lot better. But this little girl said, I don't have enough to buy it and to have lunch. Can I buy one tomorrow? And I really want to say, Richard, that I was like, absolutely, I'll hold this one for you. And I was generous and awesome. But at that point, I was on a seller's high. And I basically said, I don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow. It's now or never. And another little boy happened to mention, hey, you can buy the rock and charge your lunch. Because we had that ability. If we'd forgotten our lunch money or whatnot, they'd let you charge it and pay it later. Well, so then the rock sold like hotcakes. And I was found out by my teacher later because most of the first grade class charged their lunch that day.
And once you were found out, what did you have to return the money?
That's the funniest part. So I made almost $5,
Okay.
which was pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yes, they took the money. But my teacher came, and I loved that teacher. She was awesome. And so when she first came to me, I honestly thought she wanted to buy a rock. And she told me, school is for learning, it's not for selling. And I was just so let down that she didn't understand how important this was. And then she said, I'm going to have to call your mom. And that was the worst thing she could have possibly said to me, because my mom only came to school if it was an emergency. She worked 2 jobs at the time, and it was just, I was mortified.
It was a hardship. It was a hardship for your mom to have to leave work to come and, be there for you.
Oh, yeah. And I was trying to solve this problem without mom knowing about it. And so she called her, and she came to school, and she sat down and talked to me. And it was this really watershed type moment in my life, because number one, my mom sat me down and said some really wonderful things. She said, it's not about what you have, it's about who you are. And you should never be ashamed that you don't have money. And I believed her, and I was listening to her, but at the same time, when she talked about us being poor, she cried. And so while she was saying those right things, if you will, I got this visceral feeling that being poor was something to be ashamed of, that she was ashamed, she was sad. And I just made a vow to myself that I never wanted to feel that way again. I would have money until money didn't matter. And I also realized that as she was talking to me and telling me that she was very proud of me, that I tried to find this crazy solution and that I could do anything I wanted to do, she was so happy and her eyes shone. She wasn't crying. And in that moment, it just flipped a switch for me. And I realized, I was like, when she's focusing on something good, everything changes. The whole room feels different. So I'm not going to focus on things that aren't the way I want them to be. I'm only going to focus on what it is that I do want.
Well, I heard an interesting conversation years ago where this guy said what really changed in terms of marketing and promotion, everything in this country, was the coonskin cap. Because in the 1950s, when Davy Crockett was on TV, they started a marketing campaign with the coonskin cap. And every kid in America had to have a coonskin cap. So when kids were going to school with a coonskin cap, the kids that did not have a coonskin cap all of a sudden started feeling a sense of lack. And that was really a dividing factor in our country with the haves and the haves not. And we get that in our country with first class and second class on planes. And we see it with homeless people being on the streets in front of luxury hotels and everything. But, moving, through beyond that, and it's great that your mother saw and explained to you both sides of that coin. But going through school and everything and deciding the way that you were going to lead your life, you've created this own niche for yourself and creating a life in terms of constantly paying it forward and putting it out there. But you've created a career for yourself in terms of going into businesses and helping that. How did that start for you?
So it's interesting, the going into businesses and helping them started much later, when I started my company about 5 years ago. But it was based on something that I'd done throughout my corporate and military career without realizing it. And I think that if folks really pay attention, they'll find that their purpose, what they were meant to do, what would bring them the most joy, the most success, all of those things, is always giving you leading indicators, even if you're somewhere else in your life, in your job, whatever you're doing. It ends up being that thing that you do for free, that thing that you volunteer and do. And so I made my career, for lack of a better way of putting it, cleaning up messes. So if something was broken, I would go fix it. If a client had a problem, I would go figure out how we made that better. If there was an area of the company that wasn't earning money, I'd figure out how to turn it around. So when I then realized I wanted to start my own company, because I had been very blessed in the corporate world and I'd gotten a lot of great experience, I'd financially hit all the goals I'd ever set for myself. But what I really wanted to do was help more people, more than just this one company that I happened to be selling to and helping and those sorts of things. So when I went to start my company, candidly, I just thought I was going to help people. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I say this because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, when they've had success and they've grown a company, we get the idea that they always knew what they were doing. And I don't think that's the case 80% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
When you started, you were like, I'm hoping that this will work. Who knows? I thought I'd be teaching people to speak and to sell. But it ended up being that a friend of mine that I had met had another friend who had sold a company successfully, but had another company that was failing. And he just was ready to wash his hands of it. He didn't even want to deal with it. And that friend said, I always remember the stories and things you told me about what you did at the companies you were at. You could probably really help. Would you be willing to help? It's a failing company. It's in the trucking industry. Do you think you could fix it? And I said, 6-year-old me again from back and forth, yes, of course I can. I'm sure of it. And it turns out that as I've gone through and I've helped to scale companies across all different industries and turn around companies that were failing, that the problems that they have, even though they're in totally different industries, are very similar. And sometimes what is just table stakes in one industry is revolutionary in another. Mm-hmm. So that breadth of experience can really help people. And it's not necessarily information they'd have access to because they're going down the path of the business that they have. So I think I, in a very long-winded way, answered your question. But the short answer is I almost fell into it.
Well, I mean, looking back over the past year and a half, when so many businesses right now are at this crossroads, not knowing how they're going to proceed beyond COVID, we are in a place right now of almost suspended animation, not knowing what the next step is going to be, not knowing how we're going to proceed. What advice do you give to people right now who don't know how to plan the next step in terms of how we're going to get through this?
So the most important thing in situations like COVID or in business situations that are stressful and difficult is always going to be mindset. Because if you can keep a mindset that is working for you, and I purposely don't say a positive mindset, because when you're going through really hard stuff, you don't necessarily feel like Pollyanna. You're not smiling and happy and isn't it great that I have no idea where my business will be in a year. But if you can keep a mindset that is working for you, it can make all the difference in the world. And here's what I mean. So any situation that happens, the only thing we can truly control is the way that we respond. And if our first inclination is to think, how could this be working for me instead of happening to me, we're now looking at things through a lens that can help us find possibility. So, for example, when COVID very first started, one of my clients had just purchased a company, and he was in this situation where COVID could mean that this company that had been successful for over 2 decades now couldn't work at all, because he couldn't sell to the public. He couldn't do what he would normally do. And in those moments, we thought, okay, if this was working for us, what would we be doing? And it was become internally focused, use this time to help the team become even better at what it is that they do, reach out to our clients and ask if there's a way that we can help them with what they're going through, which in that case helps them actually develop a new product and service to take to the market. with other folks that I gave that suggestion to, it could be as simple as it just strengthened those relationships so that as the company pivoted, those clients would come with them. But whether you execute it the way I was just talking about or a different way, and I have a lot of stories of folks that executed on that one same thing, which is, how can I see this as working for me instead of happening to me? And that's where I think we all have to focus and then plan from, because the rest of it, who knows what's going to happen? Let's control the things we can.
Well, let me speak specifically about you. Everything shut down specifically last year on March 12th. What did your calendar look like on March 11th of last year?
It looked very different. So I had a lot of speaking events. I had a lot of travel, things that I was going to be doing with clients. And then on March 12th, all of those things, just like everyone else, ended. And it was really interesting because I'm sure everyone handled this differently. For me, that first day was very depressing. I threw a little pity party for myself. I don't tend to let myself do that for long, but I always want to feel those feelings because I don't want to pretend like they're not there. And then I asked myself the same question I just told you, which is, how could this be working for me? And I thought, the thing you love the most is to help people. Boy, do people need help now. How can you do that? And so I turned my focus not onto the things that I wasn't going to have because of what was happening, but on how I could help as many other people as possible get through this situation that they never planned for, they never expected. And as a result, I had the biggest year in my business I'd ever had. And that was while doing lots and lots of things for folks pro bono, because I wanted to help as many people as possible who might not be in the position to hire someone.
Let's talk about that for a moment.
Sure.
Because we are at a time right now. And again, I love this generosity culture that you've created. And you not only walk the walk, but you talk the talk. You live it all. And this idea of pro bono, several years ago, I went through a horrific lawsuit, and it consumed my life for 7 years of my life. And then at the 11th hour, a major law firm heard about my case and called me literally at the 11th hour, and they took my case pro bono. And it was almost as if the heavens had opened up for me, and they got me through it, and it ended my case, and it was amazing. And it was a pro bono case, and here you are offering to do pro bono jobs. I'm in the entertainment industry, and a lot of times in the entertainment industry, we're asked to do, and a lot of my entertainment friends are watching now, we are asked to do things pro bono. What are your thoughts about those opportunities coming our way? Obviously, we don't want to give away the goods always, but what's your rule of thumb when it comes to doing situations pro bono for others?
So first, I like to talk about, a lot of people think of pro bono and they think the word free, and pro bono actually means for good.
Yes.
Right? So what are the things that you can do that you don't necessarily have to take payment for because it feels good? You're not doing it because you feel indebted. You're not doing it because you feel like you have to, but you're excited about it. And I am blessed to be in a role and have a company where if I were to win the lottery tomorrow and become a billionaire, the only thing that would change about what I do would probably be how I arrived. I would totally get a jet. But otherwise, I would get up and do the exact same thing every day because I love it. So my advice is, when someone asks you to do something, if it is exciting, if it sounds like something that would be fun and valuable, I wouldn't worry so much about whether or not it pays you. I think it was Jim Rohn who first said that whether the crowd of people you're speaking to or doing an event for is 10,000 or 10 people, you show up the same way.
Amen.
You don't know who those 10 people are, right? So when you do that pro bono work in the entertainment industry, You don't know who's watching. You don't know who will hear about that. When you put good out there, eventually good ends up coming back to you too. And if you don't hold on to whether or not it's this thing you did or this thing you did or this thing you did that turns out to bring good your way, the good that starts to come to you will be more than you even have time to receive.
Can you give an example? I love that. Can you give an example when that absolutely happened for you?
Oh gosh, I can give so many. So
Same here. I love this. Yeah.
right. So I'll give a really simple example that a lot of people will probably be like, that really happened. So one of the things I committed to doing when COVID started was I am going to put out content on mindset and on sales and things like that on LinkedIn every day. I have more time, so I can give this to people and help them and get these free resources out there. And my whole reason for doing it was if it can uplift someone in some way, if it can help them look at something a little differently, if something that one of my clients is doing could help them without them having to hire someone, I want them to have that information. So putting that out there and that being my intent, I've actually never used LinkedIn for lead generation or to get new clients or anything like that. I just put that information out there to share with people. However, people I had never met, people I did not know, wanted me to then speak virtually, wanted to hire me to help them with their company, wanted me to be involved in their events. So something that I was doing to help others and that was super helpful for folks ended up being something for me as well. Mm-hmm. And I think what's so important here is some people say, if you give, you'll get. If you give without that expectation of getting, there will be so much that comes to you, but it's not a tit for tat kind of thing. There's a joy and a happiness just in giving and helping. But you'll notice that the people who do that without any strings attached also happen to be the people who are the most successful. And that's not a coincidence.
No, I know. When you hear my closing comments today, you'll think that we planned this.
I love it. I love it. I'd love to hear one of your stories. You said it happens to you all the time. I'd love to hear.
You know, I love giving and I love doing things for other people without expecting anything in return. And I end all my shows by talking about those things. I mean, the people that I've met in my life, just showing up and being there for people and not necessarily expecting that I'm necessarily going to get something in return for something, just showing up. And I think it's very important. Years ago, I heard an interview with William Shatner. He was 80 at the time. And Larry King said, what do you attribute to your success? And at the time, he was starring in a one-man show on Broadway. He was doing the Priceline.com commercials. Mm-hmm. He was busier than he'd ever been in his life. And Larry King said, what do you attribute to your success? He said, I get out of the house. He said, nowadays, you can order anything you want on online. Mm-hmm. And people show up. He said, I just get out of the house. I go and meet people. He said, you'd be surprised. A lot of people are surprised when they call me and say, do you want to go and do something? That I say yes to them. Just get out and do these things. And, sometimes it takes very little effort. And now we've gone through a year and a half almost, and we may be going back instead of forward, where we're going to be forced to stay home again. I mean, we just have to be willing to take chances and do those things that come our way when they come our way. And give those magic blue rocks, just if you believe in them. And I love the fact that you're doing that. I want to ask you, COVID has changed a lot of us, and it's changed our lives in many ways. How has COVID changed your life beyond the obvious things that we've all gone through? What has impacted you over the past year and a half that you think that you will be carrying forward with you as you move through the rest of your life?
So it's interesting. I've always been someone who believed in the power of mindset and who believed in the power of believing in yourself. However, it was someone I met through COVID that I don't think I would have met otherwise, who encouraged me to write Magic Blue Rocks, who said, you need to share your story with the world because people need to know that they can start from anywhere and go anywhere. And I don't think I would have shared that story. I don't think I would have shared that book had COVID not happened. And I had the bandwidth to do it. I could devote time to it and write it and get it out there. And what it did for me was really crystallize that I have been given such a blessing in that I both understand and can teach the value of mindset in a way that can resonate with a lot of folks. So in addition to my business and what I do with companies, it gave me an extra purpose of how many people can I touch with this idea so that their life can be better. And had there not been a COVID, I don't think I ever would have slowed down enough, Richard, to have realized that.
Wow.
And I find that a tremendous blessing.
And who are the people in your life, the top three, let's go there, who have said yes to you, who have made the biggest impact on your life?
So the first one would be Sue Harper. And she is one of the people I dedicated that book to, who changed my life when I was 9 years old. She is the reason the generosity culture exists. And she was pretty much a stranger to me and just changed my life. The second would be a gentleman by the name of Don Dolan, who was my first real big time corporate mentor. He turned me into a business person in a lot of ways, polished me quite a bit. And the third and most important, candidly, is me.
Good.
Because if you don't say yes to yourself, no one else is going to say yes to you. And you have more power in believing in yourself and in going forward than anyone else has for you.
And who were the top three no's?
You know, I don't remember the no people. Is that weird?
No, I think that's wonderful. You know, I remember Rue McClanahan when she won her Emmy Award after years of trying and nominations or non-nominations. She said, me too. And I worked with her on one night. I got the chance to work with her. But she said, I dedicate this award to all the people who said yes to me. But more importantly, I dedicate it to all the no's because you made me work harder. And I love that, you know, and, but, you know, but that's very interesting, you know, that the no's are not up there, but you instantly knew who those yeses were.
Absolutely.
You know, coming out of COVID, you know, are those speaking engagements starting to come back now?
They are. And like you said, there's some uncertainty now, so they could change, but they are coming back. And one that I'm super excited about is with an organization that helps high school youth in really mapping out their career, whether it's to go to college or to become an entrepreneur. So if that changes and we don't do it in person, then I look forward to however we can do it virtually, because to me, being able to have an impact on someone and inspire them at that juncture of their life is amazing.
And how are people finding you? And we've got your website scrolling on the bottom of the screen. You do both individually and corporate. But how are people finding you? And, you know, what are people looking for specifically? Are you finding as a common thread when they come to you?
So people are generally looking to scale their company. So what I work with most is CEOs and leaders of small to medium-sized businesses. So revenues between 5 and 100 million usually. And they're looking to scale and become bigger and better. And now, having said that, I have helped turn companies around. I've helped prepare people to sell if they want to retire, those sorts of things. But really, what people are looking for is to be a better version of themselves, whether it's personally, their business, what have you. And I feel honored to get to help with that.
That's wonderful. And who inspires you?
Everyone.
Everyone?
I find inspiration in everything.
I love you. I mean, what a great answer. Whitney Houston, I almost think of as almost like a guard. She unfortunately died much too young. She died on my birthday. So I always
Oh,
think of as
goodness.
almost as a guardian angel. I'm a huge fan of hers. But I look for inspiration in that's why I do what I do. I find
I love it.
inspiration in so many people. I believe everybody on this planet is worth celebrating if you try to find the good in people. And too many times we spend too much time trying to find the negativity in people. And if you spend the time to look for the positivity in folks, there's just too much negativity out there right now. And we need to focus on the positivity and getting there. And it's there. It's there, folks.
It
Just look for it. It's
It
there.
is.
Well, I've got some questions that I want to ask you. These are just some generic questions that I
Sure.
put together just to find out a little bit more about you. They're just fun questions.
Sure.
And we're going to start with where in the world have you felt the safest?
Felt the safest. Gosh, I feel like everywhere. I always feel very safe. Is that weird? I've been in Afghanistan and I felt fairly safe there.
That's interesting. That's
I
very
think it's
good.
a mindset thing. I always feel safe. Right up until the point that like I die, I'm sure. I'll be like, oh, I guess I was wrong.
And the opposite of that, has there ever been a moment in your life where you felt that you were in danger?
Sure. Like as a child, like with my childhood and my parents and those kinds of environments, that didn't feel safe.
Okay. And when did you have the most fun in your life?
Gosh, I hope tomorrow. Um, the most fun in my life. See, I don't feel like I've had the most fun yet. That's the hard part. There are so many things that I find joy in the really little things. For example, I had a friend over the other day and his dog who is older, and you wouldn't think, you know what the zoomies are when dogs get the zoomies, right?
I
She's
believe that
past
you
the
said that
age.
every night at 9 o'clock. I have a Maltese, and every night at 9 o'clock,
Yes.
he gets the zoomies.
I love the zoomies. Okay, so the zoomies are amazing. My dog is almost 13. He's kind of past the zoomies. And this particular dog is too old for the zoomies. But for some reason, she got them. And she's going around like crazy. And this was only a few days ago. And that was the most fun I had all week, laughing like crazy that this old dog is just going around like she's nuts. And to me, that kind of stuff is hilarious. So
May
I
we
have
all
the
miss
most
the
fun,
zoomies. May we
right?
all
All
miss
the
it. Yes. Okay. Um, and who among your friends made the? This is an interesting question.
time.
Who
Okay.
among your friends made the worst first impression on you?
My best friend, Drew.
Okay, you don't need to
Yep.
go any further.
Oh, I
And
can if you want. It was
do you
hilarious.
want? Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So we were introduced because we were doing a charity event together. And he is the kindest, most positive, like wonderful person. But when we first met, and this was almost a decade ago, he sat down beside me and started talking. And I was like, can I move away from the negative guy?
And that person became your best friend.
hmm
That's amazing. I love that. When have you been the most silent?
The most silent. You know, when I was a kid and my mom was battling alcoholism and the environment in our home was really negative, one of the unspoken things was everything's okay if you don't tell anyone and you pretend like it's okay.
Oh my
And
God.
that was when I was the most silent.
It's amazing that every person who grows up in that kind of a household, we all feel the same thing.
hmm
You feel that you're the only person going through it.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Everyone else is normal.
I was in a theater company, and I would always get a ride home, and they would always drop me off at my neighbor's house because I told them that that's where I lived because I was
hmm
afraid that they would see my father.
Right.
Just amazing. Um, who is the person that you make feel guilty most often?
I don't think I make anyone feel guilty.
Good. That's great.
I don't believe in guilt as an emotion. I don't think it's a good thing for us to feel. I think that if you feel guilty, then you should either one, realize that you're overcompensating or somehow someone's violating a boundary you don't have anything to feel guilty about, or make an adjustment.
Good for you.
So yeah, I don't believe in guilt.
What a great answer. What do you honor most in your mother?
What do I honor most in my mother? Probably her sense of humor, because it lives on in me.
Great. And what's the single most beautiful sight that you've ever seen?
Single most beautiful sight I've ever seen. This is tough because I feel like I've seen so much beauty in the world. You know what? Little kids hugging. Because there is so much joy in that when they hug each other, and it's such a natural and amazing thing. We could learn so much from them.
Absolutely. And my last question for you is, what is the most wonderful moment of your life that you've had up to this moment?
You know, because you know me, I'm like, I feel like it's still coming.
I know.
I always do. This wonderful moment of my life. Oh, I feel like there are so many. How do you do that? You know, I'm sorry, because I know I'm not, I keep answering in weird ways.
No,
but
there are no weird ways. I love
the
every
most
answer you give.
wonderful moment of my life happens over and over again, because it is the moment that I help someone with something that they thought they couldn't do. And then they realize that not only can they do it, they can excel at it, and they can be amazing, whether it's a little thing or a big thing. And to me, that is the best moment of my life, because I really believe that's the whole reason I'm on the planet.
Wow. Well, I am so thrilled that you are here today. I am thrilled that you said yes to me. I
was honored to be here.
Well, it's a great honor for me. I cannot wait to get my own magic blue rocks. They are on their way here. The book is coming. And just stay here for a few moments. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I don't take lightly that you could have been anywhere else for the last hour, and that you chose to be here. So thank you. And I honor all of you for being here today. And I want to thank you. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without doing without expecting anything in return. And I also go to your Facebook friends list, and let's say the fifth name that pops up, reach out with a phone call, not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call, and tell that person what they mean to you. Because as a dear friend of mine says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through right now. So take the time to reach out with a phone call. But I always say, if you're going to be out on a boat, make sure that you bring a skipper along. Now, I also want to let you know, if this is your first time here, I hope that you will subscribe to Richard Skipper Celebrates right here on YouTube. Tell your friends about it. If you did indeed like today's show, hit the like button, leave a comment right here, and tell your friends. And I'm going to leave the screen right now, April, and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to talk about anything that we talked about today, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or just any message that you want to put out to the world who's watching right now or in the future. And I just want to say to you that anytime you have anything that you want to talk about, I hope that you'll reach out to me and that you'll come back anytime. Thank you so much. And it doesn't have to be a full moon in order for you and I to talk. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow. So I feel a little on the spot here, but I will say this. Each and every one of you is so incredibly special and so incredibly important. And you have no idea the power that you have within you to do amazing things. And candidly, something that you do offhanded or that doesn't seem like that big of a deal to you could be life-changing for someone else. The person who changed my life when I was a little kid, Sue Harper, it was just a Tuesday for her. She was showing up the way she showed up all the time, and she changed my life and helped me create a movement that's changing lives all around the world. She was just being herself. So remember, You could be going about your business on just a regular day and give a smile or a word of encouragement or just some small amount of help to someone, and you could change their life.